Joe, and bro. Big Don is in the building.
Hey, it's 8:06 on the Hot Talk Morning Show. We've officially hit the midway point of the broadcast week. Slide all downhill after this next segment.
We're so funky that
we're just oozing with funk.
Andrew Donaldson answered the phone. He was like, "We're the Funk Brothers."
The Funk Brothers, not too shabby for just a couple of white guys in their mid-50s. It's 8:07 here on Hot Talk 99.5. The Hot Talk hotline and text line, of course, the funk line, as it were, on Wednesdays, 839-9950. Andrew, what's going on, my friend? Good morning.
I still don't know about that intro, man. Sounds like you're flooded, like you need to put the accelerator down a little bit and keep cranking it till it fires all the way up. But I'm happy to see you guys again.
I mean, we just need to blow on the spark plugs. That's all, my friend. Maybe a new fuel filter, and we'll be ready to go.
Fuel filter, smelter. You don't need to change the oil. You'd lose all the good stuff. Like some of those old timers believe that you should never change your oil or lick the spark plug to see if it fires and all the other fun old stuff, right?
Hey, Andrew, big story of the day yesterday here along the Grand Strand is that we finally opened the long-awaited Trader Joe's our store in our area. I don't know about you. I boycotted Trader Joe's several years ago during the whole cancel culture age. When they took away my Trader Jose and my Trader Giuseppe, I had to go.
Yeah, well, the one Trader Joe's that you and I are really familiar with up in Wilmington, I every time I got anywhere near it, I'd do it. You know, Raleigh-Durham's got 3 or 4 now in various places. They just opened another one on the upper loop up there. So it was really bizarre that they didn't have one down there. You'd think they would. I'm still waiting for one in Fayetteville. Y'all get on that. I would love to have one. But I've always enjoyed Trader Joe's, but it is kind of a niche thing. It is a very distinct market for certain people to get stuff. You're not going to go and get a family's worth of groceries for a week there. That's not what that is. But you do get, somebody like me that takes their cooking pretty seriously. You can get some really good stuff. You're not going to do bulk buy stuff, but it is a niche thing. I've always enjoyed Trader Joe's, but it's a very interesting economic. If you go back and read the story of how Trader Joe's built up, it's not a major supermarket like you would think of, like where, Walmart and Target got into the market business, right? They found their niche. They've been really successful with it. They really push customer service. They really push, being in the community, and when they build up their teams, they try really hard to get local people that know how to do customer service really well, and that's how they got their reputation. And that's why something like when that happens, it really hurts, because if your reputation is public service and the customer service that you offer, you don't want to get into things like that. But I've always liked Trader Joe's, so I'm happy to have another one around, especially if I'm down on the Grand Strand like I was last weekend.
Yeah, let's be honest, though. I mean, it's the hoity-toity of grocery stores, right? We're talking middle, upper income, demographics, mainly younger people. So essentially, mixed with a couple of cranky Yankees is the way I look at going through a Trader Joe's on any given day of the week.
Well, you and me did our time in Wilmington, brother. It wasn't the younger demographic in there. It was very much the yuppie larva and the aging hippies, and I say that lovingly and with all kinds of that. That was you're laughing because I'm right on this one. That's what you got a lot of. No, that's why I said it's niche. You go in there when you're like, okay, I need this, and this, and I can't get this at Harris Teeter or Food Line or Walmart or wherever, because they do have some of that specialty stuff, and they've got 3 or 4 things there that, like, my family just if you go anywhere near a Harris Teeter, have a cooler with you, because you're going to go to Trader Joe's and get it, because Harris Teeter doesn't have it, especially like just some of those specialty items that you're just not going to get anywhere else. So we're big Trader Joe's fans in our household, my friend.
Andrew Donaldson with ordinary-times.com. I do want to thank you on Monday for stopping by and providing some perspective, much-needed perspective, surrounding that tragedy here that took place up in Southport. And the more and more I'm learning about how this all went down, the more and more I'm finding out that this guy had cased the American Fish Company on the night before, and if it weren't for a couple of videos that were being filmed of a local band performing, it could have very well have been taken out on Friday and not necessarily Saturday. He actually know the band that was performing, and his girlfriend was filming them, and then panned it to the yacht basin there. And you saw the perpetrator's boat, pass through the camera frame and as she was filming some sort of pirate ship that was out there in the water. So just really crazy when you talk about just within a split second, a day, 24-hour cycle. How much your life can change. Without any personal choice that you're making. So still trying to get a handle on this whole thing. The reason I wanted to have you back on this morning for a couple of reasons. Yes, to banter about the Trader Joe's opening, but on a more serious note. Yesterday, we were getting a little criticism, or at least some banter back and forth on the text line pertaining to this guy's, obviously his mental state, his physical injuries, and what led him down the road to obviously, put a plan together, to kill innocent people, on a Saturday night out in the, very quiet, maritime town of Southport. And we were met with, my father was in World War II. My uncle served in, Vietnam. They came back and they weren't, shooting anybody up. What we're doing is, as we have strayed away from what personifies a masculine man by talking about our feelings, this has all led us down this road to where we're at now, where you're making excuses essentially, for his actions. Never did I make an excuse. Kind of laying it out there, given that you and I are nearly of the same age, with a number of people that we personally know who signed up and enlisted in the military directly after 9/11, watching them go through some struggles now for many different reasons. And is it better to hide behind a bottle or to abuse your family and kids because you were too tough to talk about something? Can you clear the air here? Because, you are living through this as a veteran of our country.
Yeah, and I didn't sign up after 9/11 because I was already on active duty when 9/11 happened. I'd actually just gotten home from work because I was working nights that week. So I was actually already on duty. Let's break this down. Trauma from warfare is as old as warfare, and warfare is as old as mankind. So mankind doing horrible things to each other and then having trauma after it is something that has been there from the beginning. We just didn't understand it and or acknowledge it and or wrote it off to what a lot of those people are saying, like, well, you just got to man up and deal with it. In the modern era, when we start having modern media, of course, the Civil War, you had a little bit of print media, but you didn't have the live-action pictures. You had to have the still-frame pictures. We all remember those from the documentaries. They're graphic, but they're very still. There's not a lot of movement to them. You start getting into World War I, and now you've got video, and now you've got film of what warfare is like. And now you have film of veterans coming back and what that's like. And they called it shell shock then. And then World War II, they called it battle fatigue. And then you get it, and we're going to stick to the American thing here, but this is a worldwide phenomena, of course. There's all kinds of studies. If you go into especially countries like Germany and Japan and how they dealt with post-war and how they dealt with their veterans coming back, because the previous regimes that we defeated were very evil, and those veterans had to deal with that kind of stuff. Real interesting stuff to get into, but let's just stick to the Americans for a second. You go from World War II, which was battle fatigue, and maybe you remember like in the movie Patton where they talk about like slapping soldiers that were shocked and couldn't go anymore, and they just call it cowardice, which there can be an element of that, but that's not how you handle that. When you get to the Vietnam era is what really broke a lot of American minds on it, because that was the first war where the American public and the American media started to vilify the American troops. And it's not that they didn't do bad things in certain circumstances and there weren't atrocities. It was that the perception got a little out of hand where now the veterans got treated. That's the first time the veterans came back and didn't get treated really well, especially compared to their parents, their fathers, the World War II generation. It was night and day difference. And then you fast forward to the global war on terror issue. We kind of fixed that because after 9/11 there was a great surge in patriotism and there was a great surge in military service. It's important to understand when it comes to violence and all this bad stuff, whatever societal issue you want to take, the military is a microcosm of the rest of the country. It's a little condensed slice because there's only about 1% of the American population that's on active duty at any given time, a little less than 1%. But it is a slice. So the Vietnam slice was very much of that era. And the global war on terror slice, if you were in the early days of Afghanistan or Iraq, if you were in Iraq when we went into Iraq in 2003, if you did an 2005 and an 2007 deployment, which I was in Iraq in 2005 and 2007, all those guys were now in our 40s, mid-40s, late 40s, or later pushing through. That is a slice of time when the military, the mental health stuff was just starting to catch up. They didn't have it fully understood. Remember, we had the incident where the guys came back to Fort Benning and they decided to give them antipsychotics, and they went crazy and killed their whole families. That all happened because they didn't understand you don't give those kind of people those kind of medications. All that's a slice of that time. Now, since that time, 25 years later, the mental health stuff has gotten a lot better. We understand it better, but the people that were there are kind of stuck in that little slice of time where there's still those stigmas of dealing with it, and there's still that, we'll just man up and deal with it, or you don't go to mental health because your security clearance will get jacked up, or the mental health people didn't really know how to help you, which happened to me in 2009, 2010 when I started trying to deal with some of this stuff, and it was way later, 2015, 2016, when I was already out and the system had improved that I could get some help for myself. So we have to understand that there's this little slice, and a lot of the vets, they're kind of stuck in that little timeline of when they served. So those vets from, post 9/11, 03 to 2009, 2010, and then after that when they started really getting a handle on that, those guys had a different experience than what's going on right now. And I know that's a long way to get around it, but I think it's an important thing to notice that not only is the military a microcosm, but there's no data that they're any better or worse than the rest of society. These things do run in cycles. Remember a couple of years ago we had the New Orleans truck attack and then the bombing at Trump Tower in Las Vegas. One guy, the Las Vegas guy, was actually active duty, the veteran in New Orleans. Those happened really close together. They had overlapping deployments, although there's no evidence they actually knew each other. And we had the same conversation. We've just forgotten that we had the same conversation last time because these things kind of go in cycles. But there's no data that it's any better or worse. It's just these people have certain skill sets, and when they go down these rabbit holes and their trauma gets radicalized and it doesn't make a lot of sense to the rest of us, they can be dangerous. But it's no worse or no better than the rest of society that doesn't handle mental health any better anyway.
Hey, Andrew, when you talk about going down, rabbit holes, right? The evolution, right, of the digital space, social media inundated, with anything and everything. I mean, you could, be made to believe anything you want. What role has that played in the last, 25 years with the emergence of social media and your access to so much information through your fingertips?
Immensely, because what the truth of all this is, when somebody goes off the deep end and does a horrific attack, like a major act of violence, or even something more personal, say somebody commits suicide that doesn't make any sense, or they go out and write some kind of screed manifesto. The idea that we're going to get a news headline that is going to make that make sense is almost always true. You've been doing this a long time, Joe. We've talked about this before. It's so personalized now because you can go online and feed your brain whatever you want to feed it. So if you're already having issues like the Southport shooter, and this is in no way a justification at all that he needs to get all the justice we can put upon his head, he had a physical head injury. It's not just mental health. He had physically stuff was wrong in his brain from physical trauma, and that's something that we don't always fully understand and get diagnosed, and he has resisted treatment, and we know all that now. That's a whole different thing on top of the mental health thing when you have a traumatic brain injury like that. So when you start trying to parse this stuff out like this, it's so personalized. You don't know what somebody's been reading on their phone. We have the guy that attacked the Mormon church up in Michigan. Turns out he just had a deep-seated hatred of Mormons, it looks like. It may have been involved a personal relationship that he had in the past. When everybody else looks at his life, it makes no sense, but you don't know what's stewing in somebody's brain when they get on their phone or get online, and they can feed that in private until it explodes in the public, and the public is probably never, ever going to understand that. And we use terms like, well, they just went crazy, or they went off the deep end, or they got into conspiracy theories. It's not going to make sense, most of these horrific acts of violence, because you don't know what triggered that person, because they go down the rabbit holes, and they can self-feed it in private, and you don't know anything about it until they explode.
Andrew Donaldson with us once again at ordinary-times.com. Obviously, firsthand perspective, and giving us just a snapshot in history. As you said, a lot of these guys have a hard time, and I know, family members and others, who, just have a very difficult time, particularly when it comes to, others that they've served with or in combat next to, as they, have fallen off, through their own fruition. I'm talking about, of course, taking their own lives. There's some guilt there that plays into this, coupled with all the other things that you just mentioned here over the last few minutes.
Yeah, let me just get real personal with this. I barely knew my maternal grandfather, my mom's father. I have 2 or 3 little memories of him, but I was very, very young when he died. I didn't know him very well. At the end of his life, he reconciled with his family and died in the good grace of the Lord and everybody else. He spent most of his life as a horrible alcoholic. This is a man who was too old for World War II, and he already had 3 kids, so he wasn't draftable and this sort of thing. His best friend gets killed. He is a country hillbilly. He has never been more than 20 miles from home in his life. He just wants to hunt and fish and do nothing else around the Gauley River area, what's now Somerville Lake. He'd never been anywhere. His best friend gets killed in World War II in the Atlantic on convoy duty. And by that time, 1943, they started loosening the standards. So even though he was too old for World War II and already had 3 kids, he enlisted in the Navy. Never been more than 20 miles from home. Gets sent to Bath, Maine, becomes the plank holder on the USS Frank Knox. It's a destroyer, brand new. They go to New York. And then from then until the end of the war plus 9 months, he's on that destroyer in the South Pacific, dealing with kamikazes, dealing with all the stuff you see in the South Pacific, dealing with bringing troops back. They were part of that, where he had to talk to those veterans of those campaigns, and they helped move those troops back, all that stuff. Imagine what that did to that guy. They didn't have any resources, and he came back, and he worked his tail off all week long, and he worked really hard as a heavy equipment operator and things like that. And every Friday, as soon as he was done making money for his family, he got in the bottle and stayed there till it was time to go to work on Monday. And it was horrible on my family. It was horrible on my mom's generation. And I had to reckon with, okay, if I don't have, and if you don't know me, I've been 21 years sober because I'm an alcoholic. But I have to sit there and wonder, okay, he didn't have those services, and it doesn't excuse his behavior. But that was a path available to me if I didn't get into the mental health stuff and I didn't deal with my service and I didn't have a support system and I didn't have a family around me. And at the end of his life, he got himself together. He reconciled with his family, and I'm glad he did. But think about the decades of pain and suffering. So the people that are just going to send stuff like, well, they need to just man up. No, there was a lot of bad stuff in the 50s and 60s that didn't get covered because we don't have the media and people didn't have Instagram. For those World War II vets, some of them were messed up. And then there's the Vietnam guys. And the global war on terrorism guys, we just all have social media. It's easy to see. Don't say something ignorant like you need to just man up. You don't know what those people went through. They need the services. But if they don't get the services, then we as a society got to have a conversation about what do you do with people that refuse to get help, because that's part of the story too.
Hey, thank you for sharing that, Andrew. Something that I've actually not known about you, knowing you for the better part of the last 10 years. I mean, no one does it better than our friend Andrew Donaldson at ordinary-times.com. I'm going to do it again Monday, all right, man? A little after 8 o'clock.
Anytime, buddy. Let's talk about food or something, though. Let's have some fun with this thing.
I would love to, and I hope the news takes us in that direction over the next few days, my friend. Hey, all is well, my friend. Great to hear from you, as always.
Yeah, hey, you could invite me to that condo once in a while. I haven't heard about that, talking about things we didn't know about each other. Hey, let's go to the beach, buddy.
Hey, the door is always open, my friend. You don't even have to tell me you're coming. Just say, Katz, I'm 10 minutes away from the house, and the door is always open.
We need to do live radio. I'll come down. We'll do a whole day. See you soon, buddy.
All right, brother. Ordinary-times.com. Wow. All right, 8:24 here on Hot Talk 99.5.